So thanks for joining us on today's webinar. So it's called Green Period, and it's a student-led webinar on sustainable menstruation, and it's a part of the St. Scholastica and UMD collaborations called Art of Resilience, Sustainability in the Twin Ports series. So like I said before, this is like a joint effort between CSS and UMD, and I'm Claire. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as a sustainability specialist at St. Scholastica.
Thank you, Claire. Like I said earlier, I am Elena Lawrence. I work at UMD with the Office of Sustainability there. I am gonna start with some housekeeping topics to begin with. So first off, this webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete, just so you can reference things. And we will also be adding some questions, or not questions, but resources for any questions you might have in the chat as well. So just keep an eye out for that in the future. We do invite questions and comments and any concerns or ideas as well, so feel free to drop those in the chat at any time whenever they come up as well. The format will be a panel style, giving our panelists and guest speakers the chance to answer each question, and to also, we can use any questions that come through the chat as well, in addition to the questions we already have. So to begin with that, we will first frame this conversation to give some background information on what sustainable menstruation is. So what exactly is it? It refers to, sustainable menstruation refers to the use of alternative products during one's menstrual cycle for the benefit of their body and the earth. Sustainable menstruation is based in being mindful about the negative effects of disposable sanitary products and the effects that it can have on our bodies and on the environment as well, and also to reduce the amount of waste that one creates. This movement also focuses on the accessibility of these products, because there's already a decent amount of inaccessibility of regular conventional sustainability products, or excuse me, menstruation products, not sustainability products. There's already a lot of access issues with obtaining tampons and pads to begin with. Even within the United States, looking at lower incomes, it's a little bit difficult to find those and to obtain those due to the cost barriers. And there's also the impact that it has in other countries as well. There's a lot of stigmas, and we will touch on that a little bit later, but just wanted to preface that and keeping mindful about how sustainable menstruation can be fixated in different cultures, and how it kind of is a privilege to be having this conversation, and we want to be mindful of that and want to continue to do so. So moving forward, I would just like to provide some information about different sustainable menstruation products. There's a couple different alternatives, and that's why it's such an interesting topic. There's many different ways for someone to have a sustainable period or to menstruate sustainably. So to begin with, I will provide some reference images as well. One moment, please. I just need to find the presentation. All right, so I believe I would just like to confer everyone can see the menstrual cups. Awesome, that's terrific. So we are going to start with the menstrual cups. So these you may have seen before, most commonly referred to as Diva Cups, or there's also the Luna Cup and other similar cups, but it's just a silicone material that can be inserted into your body, and it acts similarly to a tampon, and it is a one-time payment that you will have to make in order to get it, as opposed to continually buying tampons. So that's another advantage of this product, or of using sustainable menstruation products in general, is the one-time cost most typically. So moving forward, there's also the reusable pad option. So these are most often made out of cloth materials, and they can just be washed and they can be worn like regular pads in your underwear and all of that wonderful stuff, but they can really cut down on the amount of plastic waste, similar to the reusable menstrual cups as well, and that can also be very cost effective too. There's also the option of wearing period underwear, and I have a common company here that I have seen, and I hope that other people have seen before in the past as well. They are called Thinks, and they offer underwear and other clothing that you can wear, and it acts as a way to hold any bodily products that come out as you're menstruating, and it can be washed just like the reusable pads as well, and that can really reduce the amount of waste that's being created too. And again, is a little bit more highlighting the accessibility issues, because these I've only seen online and are often very expensive, but if that is something that fits in and works for you, it's definitely worth the investment as well. Next is the option of free bleeding. You can do this with just regular clothes as well, but they do create clothing typically made, or specifically I would say made for free bleeding, that collects any bodily fluids as one menstruates and allows someone to live a kind of more typical lifestyle when they are not menstruating, and is a little bit more as an outlier. It's not most common and most conventional when talking about how one handles their menstruation. So that's why it's kind of interesting to bring this up, because it's not super common, and it's wonderful to talk about these new ideas and new options. I did also skip a slide, unfortunately, so I'm going to go back to the IUD page. I didn't mean to skip that, so ignore the faultiness in the placement. But anyways, let's discuss the intrauterine device. That's another form of a sustainable period, because it actually can halt your period or lessen it, and that can really be awesome for reducing the amount of waste, because it's reducing your period. So those are just some options. And one moment. Yeah, those are just some options and what sustainable menstruation can look like. Moving forward, Claire, I know you have some points to add as well.
Yeah, so Elena brushed a little bit on like why sustainable periods matter, but here are like more of like kind of like the nitty-gritty facts and like details about it. So menstrual products, so like specifically plastic ones, produce more than 200 tons of waste per year. And most menstrual hygiene products are made out of plastic and are non-biodegradable, and that takes approximately 500 to 800 years to decompose. So that's a lot of stuff and a long time for it to go away. And menstrual hygiene products such as pads and tampons usually contain dangerous chemicals like pesticide residues, bleach, and phthalates that cause harm to the body. Um, and a person who menstruates, because it's not only women that menstruate, just a heads up, and then usually spends an average of $12,800 on like menstrual care products, and they dispose over 10,000 products into landfills during their lifetime. And just like thinking about like half of the world's population might menstruate, and so that's a lot of individuals and things. And then because there's also a big financial aspect of this, you can save money in the environment by switching these menstrual care products. And then it's also not just important environmentally and financially, but it also has a social justice sort of piece to it. So how does not having access to these products affect people? So the importance and significance of menstruating in particular should be noted. So if it's not accessible, and it's not, oh, sorry, I'm going to back up. So in some cultures and places, menstruation products are not as accessible, and it's a little bit difficult to discuss because of stigmatizations. And so in cultures where periods are heavily stigmatized, traditionally like with women, having women are have difficulty getting consistent education due to lack of menstruation products and resources. And according to the Project Drawdown website, which is a great resource and I recommend it highly, one of the most effective ways to lower the global carbon footprint is to ensure that women have access to education that's consistent and regular.
Yeah, and continuing on that similar note, across America even, there are many states that include extra taxes on products, most typically used by cis women, but also, like Claire stated, not everyone who menstruates is a woman, so the pink tax, as it's commonly referred to, doesn't affect exclusively women, but the pink tax is this discriminatory phenomena that is basically a higher amount of products are taxed if they are used by women. So most commonly tampons and pads and women's razors and shaving cream are taxed, whereas like products like men's razors and men's shaving cream and also Rogaine foam for male pattern baldness, those products are not taxed. So even within looking at what products are taxed by the government, there's kind of a accessibility issue there. There's these barriers to these products, and if you menstruate, I'm sure you understand that it can really affect you over the long haul, and that's why it's really beneficial to utilize sustainable menstruation products if you have the access to, because they can reduce that. But I would really love to share a visual with you all that shows the different areas affected by the pink tax. I will provide a link in the chat for you all to see that. But to frame this issue even further into our own area of the Arrowhead region, there's a large population of people without housing, and this issue of accessible menstrual products follows even into the homelessness population, and it just is another testament to how difficult it is to be homeless and also how difficult it is to get access to these products because it is so limited. But there are actions being taken by community groups in Duluth right now. The Minnesota Public Interest Research Group is doing a menstrual drive and a homelessness product drive for any type of resources that the homeless population in Duluth might need. So I will provide some information as well on that if that is of interest to you. But another example of how this type of community action can be beneficial and how it works, similar to what MPIRG is doing. In Scotland, there were community activism groups that had pulled together and worked with the government to provide government funding for period products and menstrual products. So these are tangible achievements that can be finally kind of realized if there is an active group of people working towards them. So it's just kind of inspiring to share those types of stories as well as the realities of the accessibility issues. But moving forward, let's introduce our panelists, and I would just love to say thank you so much for being here. It is an honor to be speaking with wonderful people and to have this conversation. So please share who you are, what you do, and how you came to be involved in sustainability and social justice like this event. And feel free to go as you wish. First, we will start with my roommate, Maggie, who I will now introduce because they are sitting right next to me. This is Maggie.
Hi, so obviously I'm Maggie. There are two Maggies here, so I'm Maggie Rogers. I guess just to let people know what my background is, in sustainable menstruation, I've used an IUD and a cup for different amounts of time. And essentially I'm here because of this person and I live with them, so awesome.
I guess I'll go next. So I'm Emily. I use she, her pronouns. I'm actually a recent UMD graduate. Right now, I'm just self-employed, but I got into sustainability as I was just getting curious. I was just reading the news about, you know, umbrella terms like climate change and stuff like that. And I just got super interested and decided to change my whole major halfway through college. But I'm really glad I did. And so I think just about a year ago, yeah, my mom actually got me my sustainable period, my menstrual cup for Christmas. And that's kind of how I got started with a sustainable period.
I can go next. My name's Grace. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm actually here on behalf of myself and my roommate, who unfortunately couldn't make it. What I do, I'm a women, gender, and sexuality studies and public policy double major, and I've been very interested in, feminist analysis of different social issues, and I think environmental issues are a really big one that are so frequently overlooked, especially when we look at the role of women and girls in combating climate change, but also the ways in which they are most vulnerable to the, consequences of adverse climate policy. So I've had an IUD since 2017, and I did not get it with the intention of sustainability. I got it for birth control purposes. And after the kind of 6-week period of bleeding and spotting afterward, I didn't get my period for about 2.5 years. I didn't bleed at all. And then I started spotting again pretty infrequently. And because the flow was so minimal, I started adopting the free bleeding method with just wearing thicker boy short underwear as opposed to my usual thong, and then just washing them when I'm done, because the spotting only lasts a couple of days. And I've been doing that for, well, mostly during quarantine, because it's a lot easier to free bleed when you're in your house all day, and you have easy access to a bathroom. My roommate, on the other hand, who was unfortunately busy, she has been using a Diva Cup for about a year now, and she got it last year. She was a bit of a skeptic about it, but she likes to try new things, and she has not gone back to using tampons since. She has a pretty heavy flow, and she's been using that Diva Cup. I don't know which one she has, but she's been using it for a year consistently and has really enjoyed it, said it's particularly useful to have for hiking. She's big into the outdoors, so she spends a lot of time hiking and climbing. And before she had her Diva Cup, when she was hiking and she got her period, she would just shove a towel in her underwear to soak up the blood throughout the day, and then at the end of the hike, wash it out in the river. And she said that the Diva Cup has made it a lot easier, and now she doesn't have to worry about river bacteria anymore in her towel. So those are kind of the experiences that my roommate and I had.
Okay, so I am the other Maggie. I'm Maggie Solway. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a junior here at UMD. I'm double majoring in biology and environmental sustainability. And I heard about this event through Elena's Instagram story, and I had to be a part of it because it combined two of my many passions, which is sustainability and periods, which sounds weird saying that that's a passion, but I don't know, I've always just been like a huge advocate for openly like talking about periods, even though to some people it might seem like a TMI topic, you know, like whenever I say tampon around my dad, he like screams. I don't know why. We all go through it. So but yeah, so I just think it's really valuable to have conversations like this because it's a good way to start diminishing like the taboos that are sometimes associated with periods for some reason. So I personally use a Diva Cup, and I started using it I think about a year ago too. And I guess I'll probably talk more about why I made the decision later, but so far I really like it, and I'm really glad that I made the switch.
Awesome. Everyone has a wonderful variety of experiences, and I think we're all coming to this conversation with some different perspectives, which I think is awesome. First, I'd like to start with the first question. That is, why did you personally decide to make the switch to sustainable products? What was your timeline of transition, and just discuss any details related to that question. We can start with Maggie. Does that work for you? Awesome.
So I would say that the reason I personally, first I transitioned from tampons to using a cup. That was in high school, mainly because I didn't like always needing a certain number of things with you, or like I'm going to use so many things in a day, or paying for however many tampons you would need to use. Like I'm in a household of all girls, so I would say that we would spend probably $50 on tampons a month, because however many people needed them. So I would say the biggest things were cost and using one thing, not needing a constant supply coming in and going out.
Whoever else wants to answer this question, you may go first. We could continue in the order that we introduced just for consistency's sake, so I will say that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, I knew I wanted to get a Diva Cup because I was so sick of buying tampons, and I really couldn't afford to. And sometimes I would just skip it and just free bleed because I didn't want to pay for them. And I didn't want to pay, the upfront. I think it's like $33 or so for a menstrual cup. And my mom was the one who really helped me do that because I really couldn't afford either. But if you are thinking of Christmas gifts, someone who might be interested in one but doesn't want to pay, it's a really good gift idea.
I think I'm next, but before I go, I think there's a question in the chat. I don't know, Emily, since you were talking about the Diva Cup, if you want to answer that real quick.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was definitely really skeptical of it. I do have a heavier flow in the first part of my period, but I really don't notice any leakage or anything. I would say it's definitely like a learning curve. You have to get used to using it, and like how to put it in and take it out comfortably. But once you get used to it, you realize it's much easier than tampons. You don't have to worry about changing your tampon every 4 hours or whatever. You can kind of just leave it in all day, and then at the end of the day just like give it a little rinse, and I think it's nice to kind of forget about it. So I don't ever have any issues with leaking.
Okay, so I can talk more about my experiences. Kind of like I mentioned in my intro, I switched to the IUD. I have the Mirena IUD, which lasts for 5 years, and I initially got it without even thinking about the sustainability aspect. I am a person who lives with ADHD as well as a host of other neurological disorders, and so for me, taking a pill every day, I already struggle enough to take my ADHD meds consistently, and so relying on a daily pill at the same time every day to, prevent myself from getting pregnant, that was not at all reliable for me. And kind of similarly with tampons, I would find myself leaving tampons in much longer than they should have been. And so I was constantly worrying like, oh my God, I'm going to die of toxic shock syndrome, freaking out. And so when I got the IUD, I'd say it's a pretty hefty investment up front. In Minnesota, at most clinics that do IUD insertions, you can actually apply for state insurance to cover the charge. I think when I got it, it was about $1,600, but my insurance covered most of it. So I think I only had to pay like $200 or something. And it really was so worth it because I didn't spend a penny on menstrual products for 2.5 straight years. I didn't have to worry about my flow or anything. And I was just able to go about my life without having to, deal with those concerns. And then I started getting spotting again. I was like, oh, well, what you gonna do? And I found that I started using tampons again, but it wasn't like, I felt like I was leaving them in for so long and they weren't soaking up enough blood to make it worth it. And it just got to the point where they weren't necessary. And so I started adopting the free bleeding technique earlier this year, actually, with quarantine. And I have like a couple of pairs of like boy short underwear that I really like. I wear those with sweatpants, and I just spot a bit throughout the day and then rinse them in the sink with some soap and water, and then honestly dry them with a blow dryer because I'm too lazy to throw them in the dryer by themselves. And I still do that consistently. I was actually talking to Elena about this last week. I actually just am on the tail end of my period. I got my period last week, and I luckily had like my favorite boy short underwear available, so I just slipped them on and went about my week without really worrying about it. I think I am definitely very lucky that my flow is pretty light. It was pretty medium, I'd say, before I got my IUD, so it didn't really have a huge impact, I think, as much as it would for people who had a heavier flow. But I think I am able to free bleed a lot more easily because it's more spotting than flow. So I think if you are someone who does have more of a spotting period, free bleeding is really simple. It's honestly the same as just like getting a little bit of a food stain on your shirt or something. Blood washes out so easily. So I'd recommend that. As for my roommate, she started using the Diva Cup a year ago. And, like Emily said, there is a bit of a learning curve. I was with her the first couple of days that she was using it, and she was trying to figure out how to take it out without spilling blood all over. But she kind of got used to it and just taking it out over the toilet, or like when she was in the woods, just taking it out. And she's got better at taking it out without like getting blood spattered on her legs or anything. And just rinsing it out in the bathroom was super easy. We stopped like stocking tampons in our room because our freshman year we were buying a ton of tampons between the two of us just to keep in our room, and we stopped doing that completely because both of us have switched to sustainable methods that have made it a lot easier. And she said that the switch was really great for her because she does lead a very active lifestyle, and she doesn't have to worry about, like Emily said, like switching out the tampon at the certain time, which is really hard to do if you're in the woods. But she said that it's made all the difference in her life, and she's really glad she made the switch.
Yeah, okay. So I made the switch to the Diva Cup for environmental and economic and health reasons, because I know it was mentioned earlier, but I knew that, or I found out like in high school that tampons are full of like obnoxious chemicals that don't need to be there. And like I remember, I think I had my dad like buy me a box of tampons in high school, and I was always particular not to get the scented, but like obviously he didn't notice it. And I like opened the box, and it was just like a whiff of like synthetic floral. Like it's just, I don't want that in my body. So there was just all of those reasons. It took me a while though to kind of get on board with the Diva Cup, not gonna lie, because it intimidated me a little bit. I was so comfortable using tampons and I was used to it. It's all I've ever done. So I was just kind of lazy and I didn't want to switch. But after thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, if I do end up liking it, then I'm saving so much money. I don't have to go to Target once a month to get tampons, you know, and I don't have to make my dad get me tampons and he gets the wrong kind. Like, just a lot of good things come from it. And yeah, so it did take me a while to make the switch, but I'm really glad that I did. I think a reason why it took me such a long time was because um, none of my friends really did it. I feel like it was just kind of a new thing that I didn't know a lot of people who actually used the Diva Cup, so that was another thing. Also, like when we have the period talk at school, like in middle school, I feel like that was never, at least in my school, we never talked about like using a menstrual cup. I didn't even know that it like existed. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's answers. I would also like to answer this question. I use the reusable pads, and I have used those for the past 3 years. I most often get weird looks when I tell people that I use that, but I really made the switch because I really hated buying pads. And I had heard of my friends using Diva cups, but I've never used a tampon. That's not so, like, there are people who exist who don't like tampons, and I represent that community. So love the pads so much. They are wonderful. They come in different sizes. I bought a large, a medium, and a thong size because that's what I typically used when I used pads. And one day, after having conversations about people talking about Diva cups, I was walking at the grocery store and I saw that they had something called Party in My Pants, and they had funky patterns on the fabric. So I was like, what is this? And it turns out it was a reusable pad. So I had never even heard of a pad that could be made out of cloth before until I had been walking at the grocery store and seen it. And I was like, if other people can use Diva cups and feel comfortable with that and incorporate that into their routine, then I can most definitely do that with cloth pads. And the timeline was really just walking into the store, seeing them, having that thought already in the back of my mind of I would love to reduce the amount of waste and the amount of money that I spend on these products. So it was kind of a killing two birds with one stone kind of situation. So that's my experience. Claire, I would like to extend an offer. If you have any input on the question, you can nod your head yes or no if you answer this question, but feel free to answer it as well. And same thing, like I said, any attendees who want to have their voice be heard, this is a discussion, this is a platform that you are welcome in. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of like Maggie S. In that way where I first got a menstrual cup in high school, and like I think I just like fell into this hole of the internet, and that's how I found it. And like a lot of my friends and like my mom like thought I was kind of crazy and skeptical, but so I guess so I had been using a cup until about a year ago, and then I got like the arm implant for birth control. And then so I kind of like do have spotting, and it's a little bit heavier where I can't just like just free bleed or something like that. So then I do use my menstrual cup like in between. And I guess like for the timeline of my transition, like I had a really hard time figuring out like how to use it at first, because like it was just kind of like me on my own adventure. Like I didn't really have like anyone instructing me. um so at first it was really difficult, and I did actually leak a lot, so I had to wear like a lot of liners and that sort of thing. So like just keep in mind, if you are new to using a cup, like no one's perfect at first. It's definitely a learning curve, and just be prepared to ruin some underwear. That's my experience, at least.
I think just going off of what you said, Elena, about reusable pads, I went to a all-girls Catholic high school, and there was kind of this sense of like, oh, we want to empower women or whatever, but they also simultaneously stigmatize solutions like IUDs, things that would even remotely suggest a woman could have premarital sex without getting pregnant. And so they never really talked about those kind of solutions. Like, they made tampons and pads readily available. But we also volunteered for an organization called Days for Girls, which focused on, like you said earlier, how a lot of girls are not able to attend school as frequently because they are kept home by their periods, because they do not have access to sanitary products. And, some girls can miss up to a week of school every month, which really does add up and makes them fall behind. And so every year we would have a whole weekend where we would all come to school and volunteer to make reusable pads. But the thing I thought was weird was that we're talking about what a wonderful solution these reusable pads are and how they're great for these girls in, Haiti and Sudan and Ethiopia and, all these developing countries, but never really talked about them as a solution for us to reduce our waste. The girls in my school, the little sanitary product disposal containers in the bathrooms were always full. Everyone used tampons, everyone used pads, and you're in an all-girls school, so it adds up really fast. And I feel like nobody in our school ever talked about reusable pads and sustainable menstruation products as a solution for us, rather as a solution for people living in poverty or people who don't have access to the seemingly more desirable regular tampons and pads that we see every day. So I think that in schools in both Minnesota and the rest of the US, we do have a long way to go in the way we frame sustainable menstruation products, because I think a lot of people stigmatize them or see them as kind of primitive. I think free bleeding especially, we talked about in my religion class about the red tent and how biblical women would have to take 7 days out of their month to be with other women and hide in the red tent and freely bleed because they could not bring shame to the men of the household. So me free bleeding feels very primitive and biblical to a lot of people. But I feel like there's a lot of work that has to be done to destigmatize sustainable menstruation products in, the first world.
I think you make wonderful points that kind of discuss the stigmas, like you were saying, against these products, when in reality they're products that everyone on this panel at least utilizes and is very thankful for. And although they might have issues, they really do help benefit us quite a bit. But I would like to go on to the next question, as well as the other questions we have coming forward. So this next question is, how could your sustainable period option be more accessible? So kind of touching on what we were discussing earlier, what stigmas would have to be removed, what resources could be added, any ideas that you have on the topic, feel free to share and add and discuss about.
I would say that, and I'm sure the rest of you who use cups experience this as well, but when I started out, it was not even something you could really find in a store. Like, I had to order mine online. So it's good to see that now maybe if you were walking around Target or wherever you shop, you might see a few different options on the shelves. But I think a big part of the cup factor that's missing is providing information on like sizing, where to get them, extra products that go with it. Those things are just not really out there as resources for anyone to find. You kind of have to go out of your way looking for it, which obviously makes it hard for new people to get into this. And on the other hand, right now I have an IUD, and obviously the most important thing for keeping options like IUDs and implants accessible is keeping sexual and reproductive care centers open, such as Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. I think my first time I ever saw a Diva Cup in the store was at the Whole Foods Co-op in the East Side, which is definitely not a place for all people, let's be honest. But that was the only store I'd ever seen it in. So yeah, bringing in the accessibility factor, maybe having them be a little cheaper, maybe as they become more popular, I'm not sure. But I think having conversations like this is also a big part of it, and talking to like your family and friends about it too, because my mom thought I was a weirdo when I told her I wanted this Diva Cup. And then she bought it for me even after that. And I don't know, just having the conversations and making it less weird, I guess. And then I liked your idea, Maggie, when you talked about Planned Parenthood, because what if they offered it there, you know, like for a lesser cost or something? Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think accessibility is such a huge thing, especially when we look at menstruation solutions rooted in birth control. I think I was very fortunate to have access to an IUD. You know, I decided I wanted one after the presidential election of 2016, and I was able to get one relatively quickly. You know, I called and made the appointment that December, and then they have the consultation appointment. And then, you know, they put you on the pill for like 2 weeks beforehand, and then you go back and get the IUD put in. And I was very lucky because I had a car, so I was able to drive myself to and from those appointments. The only clinic I could find that would, you know, take me on as a new patient without my parents' kind of knowledge was in Hopkins. And, you know, I'm from Richfield, so it was like a 30-minute drive to get out there. And I was able to make that trip. But also the ability to go to a consultation and go to an appointment to get the insertion. Both appointments only lasted like 5 minutes, but because of how overloaded a lot of these clinics are, I was waiting for 4 hours for both of these appointments. So I think reproductive clinics are just way overloaded because we are seeing so many of them being defunded. And so now people are having to come from farther away to go to a fewer number of clinics, and they're being overwhelmed. Secondly, you know, I had the financial means to get an IUD. You know, I was already insured thanks to my dad's employment. So I was able to rely on my insurance to pay for the majority of my IUD, and my family was in a stable enough condition that when we got billed for the extra like $200, my mom did find out eventually because the bill came to the house and she got it. She didn't have a huge problem with it, but because we were in a financial position of being able to pick up that extra $200, I was able to go ahead with that. And I know that's not the case for everyone. I think, you know, birth control definitely has to be a lot more accessible than it is. We're seeing it being demonized by so many groups. And I think especially looking at like my upbringing and education in Catholic schools, you know, birth control was never an option that was discussed. It was never offered. I know my brother's public high school had like the school nurse could write you a prescription for the pill. They had condoms ready, whereas my school nurse, no condoms, even if you asked. They didn't even mention birth control. So using birth control as a way to mitigate menstruation was never really talked about. I think there are a lot of issues with not just accessibility, but also the stigmatization, especially from a religious standpoint. And it's so over politicized, you know. it started a lot with the women's movement back in the 60s and 70s when they started to use the phrase of personal is political. And the functions of our bodies have become so politicized that the solutions we create for ourselves have become demonized because, God forbid, a woman or a person with a uterus take control of their own body. So I think we definitely need to do a lot of work in recognizing the agency of people who menstruate and their ability to create sustainable solutions. And we need to start investing in those financially and in terms of, trust and leadership, because sustainable menstruation solutions rooted in both reproductive medical care and, reusable pads, Diva Cups, they're the future of both menstruation and the environment. And we absolutely have to start recognizing that as a society.
Yeah, those are all really good points. So one way that I think we could make sustainable period alternative or options more accessible is honestly like just educating earlier on. Like I said before, when I had my period talk during middle school, I think it was, or something, the one that we all have to go to and everybody makes a big deal about it, and like the guys are in one room, the girls are in another room. I feel like during that time, like I would love to see the Diva Cup being brought up or other options, reusable pads and stuff like that, because then they can just get started really early on with using it. And also just seeing Diva Cups in more stores, because like Emily mentioned before, like I had to order mine online, but I don't think I've ever seen one in store except for maybe Target now or something. So making it more accessible and obviously more affordable would be great too, because I can't quite remember how much mine was, but I think around like $30. I might be wrong. But it is kind of nice because you save a lot of money in the long run, but reducing the initial cost would be really, really helpful.
I just want to add that was, as I mentioned, the biggest barrier in me making that transition. I just didn't want to pay that $33 up front, even though I knew it would save me a lot of money.
Oh, hi. So, I guess some of the challenges I had, I kind of discussed earlier with like just feeling kind of alienated about it. I guess that's why I'm really happy that I can be a part of like this panel and that there are more open discussions sort of about it. But I do think, like everyone was saying, like accessibility is really hard, and then also information as well as like the whole price thing, because I'm a really cheap person and like $35 is a really big like price right away. Like even if you like, I wasn't really sure if I would like it or not, or if I would stick with it. So just like paying $35, like that was a big gamble. But I liked it and I'm glad it worked out for me. And so, is there anything you wanted to add, Elena?
I would say yes. I think we would all agree that the cost barrier is by far the biggest, in addition to the culture and the stigma. My mom also had a similar reaction. She was absolutely disgusted when I brought home reusable pads and I was cleaning them. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Listen, you have had a uterus for as many years, you've dealt with this. It's no different than what you've already been using. It's just how we talk about it and honestly our exposure and experiences with it. It's just a matter of what you're used to and we can change that." So that's what I would add.
Sweet. And then we're on to our last question. So what sort of advice would you give to a new sustainable menstruator? Like what are some things like you wish you had known when you first started and that sort of thing?
I would say regarding what I know about the IUD and about the cup, just don't like doom scroll through Google being like, "Oh my God, look look how many people are like saying their IUD hurt, or like, oh, look at this weird thing you have to do to get your cup in. In the end, none of it is as bad as the first few times you see it, and you're just like, what? What? You got to do what to get that thing up in there? It's not hard. You can do it. And people will have bad experiences, of course, but the people who go out of their way to share their opinion have had the worst experiences. Most of the people you'll never hear because nothing happened. And I love my IUD. I enjoyed the cup, and I think it's a good experience and good thing for any person with a uterus to try.
Well, for the Diva Cup, and just to clarify, I have the actual brand Diva Cup. I didn't have a say in it. I'm fine with it. I like it. There's other brands that have some sort of variations with design, but I like it. Basically the same as what Maggie said. Just give it a chance and like be patient, and like it's okay if you don't like it right away, but definitely like keep trying, and just don't try not to give up if you don't like it at first, because any new thing is different and weird. But like I said, after you get comfortable with like the insertion and like taking it out, the whole time it's there, you don't even know. And it's just like a relief to not worry about it the whole day, and you don't have to worry about like emptying it in school or anything. It holds a lot of blood. So, but yeah, just give it a chance.
Yeah, I think like Maggie said, don't doom scroll. I think that's definitely something I went through when I got my IUD, because I didn't know anyone else who had one. I didn't have anyone to ask those questions to, so of course I Googled them, and I always find the scariest answers. And I think that's part of why I become such an outspoken advocate, and I've been so open about my experience with having the Marine IUD. Since I've had my IUD put in, I have had dozens of other, girls and women come to me, oh, I heard from so-and-so you have an IUD, like, can you tell me about it? What do you think? And I always say, look, if you don't want to have to worry about your birth control or about tampons, pads, any of that, just go for it. If you're able to, do it. I think a lot about the initial fear that I experienced the first time I had to put in a tampon. And I remember, because I couldn't wear a pad at the swimming party, and I was sitting there in the bathroom trying to figure out how to get this tampon in, sobbing, making everybody late. And the fear that I felt on the table at the clinic getting that IUD put in did not even match the fear of that first tampon. I think it's very empowering to feel like you're taking control of your menstruation and finding a kind of solution that works well for you. It does take some trial and error. It does take a little bit of research and asking around, but I have never doubted for a second that the Mirena IUD was right for me. And as soon as this one expires, I'm going to get another one because it is so worth it. So my general advice would just be, remember that you're doing what's best for you. Don't listen to what other people have to say about it, and try to find people that you trust who have gone through similar things as much as you can. Because having open discussions about things like this makes it easier for other people to access these solutions in the future.
My advice is kind of the same as Emily and Maggie's. Just be patient, because it definitely took me a while to make the transition from tampons to the Diva Cup, because it's very different and it's very intimidating at first. But yeah, I think we all went down the road of like watching like a ton of YouTube videos, and that can really freak you out. Some of it I found was a little bit helpful though. because I had troubles, like I did not know how to insert it, and I watched a video and she like explained like how she folds it a certain way and she'll like twist it, and maybe I could find the video again, but honestly like that helped me a lot because I was doing it completely wrong at first. So watching a little bit of YouTube is okay, but don't watch too much because then it will freak you out. But just be patient and trust the process, and yeah.
Alrighty. So, just in reference, like a lot of our panelists talk about fit guides, and Elena posted a really helpful, like, kind of paragraph in the chat, with links to all like these different resources where you can find all these products as well as more information on them and that sort of thing. You might have to scroll up a little bit, but it's definitely there. Oh, and then before we end, would you guys please mind filling out this last like survey, just like for feedback and that sort of thing?
Thank you again for filling out the form. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to message us at any point in time. Hopefully you have been able to see the resources. If not, we will also send those in an email as well. So keep an eye out for that to look through the resources at your own time. But I would like to say thank you so much for joining us. And we do have webinars in January that we will soon be posting information on. And thank you so much for your time. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.